Hi, Lee. Welcome to our show.
Hello, Savannah. Greetings unto thee.
Greetings unto thee, too. Is that how you greeted people when you were growing up?
What sayest thou, therefore, unto these things?
Jesus? Lord? Oh, thank God that's not how he was talking. I would be like, I'm out. I need some slang. Lee, what's the latest? What's the greatest?
I don't know much. Not a whole lot.
How was St. Louis?
St. Louis was lovely. Yes, we did a little one-night run up to St. Louis with Audrey Assad and for No Small Endeavor, and it was just lovely. A lot of fine folks there in St. Louis that were very hospitable to us. So.
And there was some music, I'm guessing, with Audrey.
Yes, yeah. She performed.
Did you get to do anything too?
I sang one song with her. Yes, and she had rewritten had written new lyrics to the old hymn, "Sweet Hour of Prayer," and so it was fun. Of course, I always anytime I get to sing with the guest, I'm always kind of hip to that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Lee, anytime you start singing, I'll harmonize with you. Don't worry. Well, are you reading anything, watching any TV lately?
No, we haven't gotten in. We've finished whatever our last series was that I think I've
Department Q.
Yeah, and so we haven't found another new series that we're working on currently.
Hey, are you into cult stuff?
Into cult stuff. You're going to have to tell me more.
Cult TV, cult documentaries.
Oh, no. Mm-mm. You?
You're going to hate the show that I'm about to recommend.
Okay.
So this is not a recommendation for you.
Okay.
This was like when I gave you a little boo-boo for Christmas. This is for me.
Okay.
It is called Trust Me, and it is about a Mormon cult, the Fundamentalist Latter-day Saints, in Arizona, that a prophet who believed that he took over Warren Jeffs or whatever his name, Warren Jeffries. He was the big Mormon prophet for a while for the Fundamentalist Latter-day Saints. And then he went to jail. And then this new guy named Sam was like, I'm the new prophet. And this woman who used to be Mormon basically felt like she and her husband needed to move to their town to help infiltrate this fundamentalist Mormon sect. And they did a whole documentary about it.
For the sake of exposing it?
For the sake of exposing it and for rescuing a lot of these women and girls. And she freaking did it. It's so inspiring, but it is very culty. So if you don't like the cult thing, then you're not going to like this.
And what's the name of it again?
Trust Me.
Trust Me.
And took, over 6 years to film.
Oh, wow.
It was a very long process and journey that this woman and her husband were in it for the long haul.
And are they secretively taping?
Sometimes, but this sect believed that this woman and her husband were doing a documentary on them to show their beautiful way of life.
I see. Yeah.
They were undercover.
Yeah. Interesting.
But it gets complicated because you obviously do see like the beauty in some parts of things and all of that. But anyways, that's for any cult people out there.
Yeah.
In an effort to honor Brandon, our recent reviewer who told us, stop reading so many reviews.
Yes.
Let's just get started with the show quickly.
Do it.
Welcome to the Subtext, where we go beneath the headlines and beyond the obvious. I'm Savannah Locke.
I'm Lee C. Camp.
If you like what we're doing and want to help us get the show in front of more people, please do us a favor by following and rating it wherever you listen. If you leave us a review, we might read it on the show. Give us 5 stars and hype us up. And if you want to watch full video episodes, you can find those on YouTube and Spotify. You can follow the show at The Subtext Show, me at Savannah_Locke, and Lee at Lee C. Camp. And if you have any questions or suggestions for the show, just DM us on Instagram at The Subtext Show. Lee, have you ever voice texted your own name?
Voice texted?
Do you ever use voice text to text people?
Occasionally.
Okay, so that's basically how I always text.
Okay.
And if you say Lee C. Camp,
it comes out as Lacey. Lacey.
Not on mine, but that's funny that it does on yours. It will do Lee, and then it will say your last name is Seekamp, and I have no idea why.
Scamp.
Mm-hmm.
Lee Scamp.
Maybe it's because I talk fast.
Yes, maybe
but
so.
But every time I say and Lee at Lee C. Camp, the visual pops up of whenever I've done that on voice text. How awry it goes.
Fascinating, yeah.
But Lacey is a good one too. Maybe I could just call you Lacey.
When we started doing No Small Endeavor and we're on public radio, we got a listener who wrote in and said, will you please not rush your name? And I can't remember who the other public radio person was. She said, I thought for years he was such and so. And then I realized, oh, no, that's such and so. She said, we don't need Lacey Camp. We need Lee C. Camp.
Lacey Camp forever.
Yeah.
Have you always done Lee C. Camp or has it ever been Lee Camp?
I was always Lee Camp until I started having a career. And then there's a comedian named Lee Camp who's I think he's in the Washington area. And there's a soccer player named Lee Camp, professional soccer player. And so I used my middle initial for disambiguation purposes.
Yeah. You had to stand out and be special.
So, well, I don't like the way that sounds. But
for me, it's just like search engine optimization, where it's like if someone needs to find you, they know how to.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's great. That's a good way of putting it. No, I was teasing about the being special thing.
You didn't look like you were teasing.
Well, anyways, on the cult documentary, that is on Netflix.
Okay.
And I want to say it's such a good documentary, even though what I'm about to say next will make it seem like I'm critical of Netflix overall.
Okay.
So that's how I'm going to set this up. Did you get a chance to watch the Oscars several weeks ago?
No.
Okay, well, in the Oscars, there was this skit that the host, Conan O'Brien, did with my favorite, Sterling K. Brown, who was in the show Paradise that I told you about.
Okay.
And they did a skit where they basically jokingly retold the plot of Casablanca, but reiterated every single plot point along the way to leave no room for ambiguity. And they were doing this to kind of poke fun at rumors that have been swirling around over the last few months that Netflix executives have been telling all of their shows, listen, people are busy. They're watching your show while they're also texting. So we need you to reiterate the plot point over and over and over and over again so that people don't get lost. So when they did this, Netflix executives were super offended and they completely denied it. But Matt Damon and Ben Affleck went on Joe Rogan's podcast to talk about their new Netflix movie. And they said, yeah, people told us that we need to reiterate the plot of this movie too. And they resisted and they were like, we're not going to make this a bad screenwriting situation just because people are also on their phones. So I did a lot of research into this, and Netflix calls this casual viewing. So basically, casual viewing is people are going to watch this movie or this show, but they're going to be doing other things too. So you need to make sure that it's abundantly clear. And that hit me in an interesting way. And it got me questioning a couple of things. Number one, what gets lost when a streaming platform like Netflix actively reshapes its stories to accommodate distracted viewership? So what happens
to
when
accommodate destructive viewership?
Distracted
viewership.
Casual viewership.
Yeah.
What happens to our stories if that is what we are accommodating? And is anything lost in that? Let's start with that question.
Well, it seems like not necessarily.
Okay.
But I don't like it.
Okay. Okay, well, let's go there. Why don't you like it?
Because I don't want to be treated like an nincompoop. I want to be treated like someone who is paying attention.
That word. Wow.
Yeah, I
haven't heard that in such a long time.
What sayest thou therefore unto these things?
That's thrilling. Okay, yes. So you don't want to be treated that way.
No, I do like and find it a little bothersome when they don't give you what's happened previously. When it's a series.
You want the recap.
I want the recaps if it's a TV series. But no, I don't want to be treated like I'm not paying attention because I want to be a person who pays attention. However, you wouldn't talk in a children's book the same way you would talk to if you're writing a novel for a college-educated person. You're not going to talk in the same way that you would in a children's book, right? And so part of the most charitable interpretation of that would be you're having to choose who your audience is and what you can presume about your audience. And if you presume that they are distracted, then well, here you go. However, arguing with myself, when you have that powerful of a platform, maybe you are just further contributing to the distracted nature of all pop culture. And maybe you could do us a service by not catering to that and making people pay attention.
That was my next question. By accommodating distracted viewership, are we training or are they training people to stay distracted?
Right. Yes. And I suspect the answer to that is yes.
It's my guess too. I read a Substack article about this, and they compared Netflix's. They actually took like parts of scripts and stuff, like even from Stranger Things, which is a really big show, and even talked about how from season 1 to season 5, in season 5, everything became much more explicit. So it would be something like, Lee, are we going to go into that room to see the Demogorgons now? And it's like, yeah, because the Demogorgons do X, Y, and Z. And if we get them, then we'll do this. And they're literally like naming out loud what they're doing in order to make it really explicit, whereas that wasn't true in the first few seasons. And then in this article, they compared Netflix to Apple TV, which they said was kind of like the foil of Netflix, where Apple TV has shows like Severance, which I don't know if you've seen.
I have.
Yeah, I love Severance. They have a show called Pluribus right now. And basically different shows that are slow burns.
Right.
Like the plots are really slow, some minimal scripts where a lot is happening in silence that you do have to kind of pay attention. And they said that Apple TV is basically differentiating themselves so much in order to get subscribers because they're never going to find a show from Apple TV. Oh yeah, Tehran is on Apple TV too, which you like, which also I think fits this bill too. That plot is extremely complicated. But basically they're saying like they're setting themselves apart because people who subscribe to Netflix could never get the same thing on Apple TV. But he also talked about it from an attention perspective, which is that some of these shows might demand more of an attention.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so much of it just comes back to what are you trying to accomplish? And if what you're trying to accomplish is just always increasing your followers and your consumerist kind of vision, then you're going to go one way. If you have a larger vision of what storytelling and the art of storytelling is about, then you're going to probably go another way.
I do want to talk about storytelling too. First, I wanted to talk about the attention span issue that we have at the moment. This is very famous research. In fact, I was talking to someone earlier about this, and she has done some talks based on this research. But basically, current research indicates that our attention spans have moved from 2.5 minutes down to 47 seconds in the last 2 decades, which is a 66% decrease. And I'm wondering, like, is it the chicken or is it the egg? Like, is our attention span decreased so much because all of the content we're having is like short form and blah, blah, blah? Or is all the content short form because our attention spans have decreased?
I don't know how it's possible not to imagine that all of our technology, I mean, there's all sorts of stuff about the way the technology is doing this to us, and how we're certainly yielding to it. And then, so vicious cycle, at least it seems. But man, it really is distressing.
The attention span pieces.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Have you noticed that in yourself and in students? Like, what is your take on this, the potential harm of not having attention spans?
I've definitely noticed it in students over the years, because when I started as a teacher in 1999, people did not have smartphones, didn't have social media. And moreover, I think one of the biggest things, though, that I noticed by the end of my teaching time was that early in my teaching, office hours was a thing. And students would actually come to your office and sit and talk for a long time. Mm-hmm. And then by the time I was done, that hardly ever happened. And you would occasionally get a really curious student who would say, hey, can I come by sometime? Or can we get coffee sometime? But the incident rate of that just plummeted through the years because of, I would say because of social media and because of the high levels of distraction with all sorts of things where personal engagement just wasn't competing well with all the distractions that you have with all the tech. But yes, definitely impact.
Do you feel that your attention span has changed at all?
I definitely, it sometimes will depend upon how much I have been online of late. It's kind of I read so much and I can still stick in there and read pretty well. But if I've been online a lot and have had to tend to a lot of stuff online, I can just tell in the midst of those seasons that it affects me, and I have to push harder to stick with a book, say.
Yeah. I think that with a friend that I was talking to about this episode earlier, she was like, I feel like your attention span is so good. And I think the only reason I have any attention span is because I read. Because every other part of my life does not lead to a good attention span.
Right. Sometime in the last year, I interviewed a high-profile tech person. He's one of the kind of tech bro guys with one of the largest tech companies in the world. And I asked him, he was making some comments, and I said, what do you I've been thinking about Wendell Berry as you've been talking, and I think Wendell Berry might say such and so. So what do you think about that? And he said, well, I don't really read many books, and I don't know Wendell Berry, but then he went on to say what he would say that was kind of snide towards Wendell Berry. And then probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 months later, I interviewed another woman who was the head of machine ethics learning, whatever, at Twitter before Elon Musk took it over.
Mm-hmm.
And in that interview, she said, look, a lot of these tech people don't read books, and they see it as a point of pride not to read books because they can get it quick. Whatever they want to learn, they can get it quick.
Yeah.
And I think that if indeed there is this sort of pride about I don't have to read books, it's missing in many ways what a book does and how it forms us. And books form us in a way that they require attention, and through the attention and the intention, they just form us in a way that a tweet's never going to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so similarly with short so-called content and making a story too easy to follow because you're being treated like a child, that forms you in certain ways as well, right? And so if you're really going to be able to see things with any kind of perspicuity, or not perspicuity, any sort of serious...
Perspicuity. We need normal language.
If you're not going to see it with any kind of insight,
nice,
then you're going to have to learn to stick with long arguments, and paying attention to things and paying attention to a long storyline.
Lee, I thought the booing thing was really funny, by the way, but I just realized that that's not really, I don't know if you've seen me do that. That's what I do in conversations when people go too far outside and I don't know what they're talking about. I'll be like, give me back normal language. That is so interesting about that tech bro guy. There is an app. Do you know about this app that will take novels and reduce them down for you to the core points so that you don't have to read them? Have you heard of this?
No, but I mean, that goes back to the old, what do we call those when I was in school? There were these little yellow booklets you could buy. So
for dummies. Is that what it is?
No, Cliff Notes.
Oh, Cliff Notes. Yes.
It's like Cliff Notes, right? So it's been around in a way for a long time, but
they'll take, there's one, it's called Blinkist, and they will take these really complicated things, and they're like, here's the Cliff Notes version of it.
And I will confess, I had a Blinkist subscription for a while.
I'm shaken. Yeah. I feel like you would have been such a purist in this area.
Well, but no, I'm not a purist about it, because there are some books that I want to know what it says, but I don't have the time to read the whole thing, right?
Yes.
And so I think that with a lot of this stuff, you just have to pick and choose, right? But if you don't have the skill to stick with a book and actually to read a book, you're lacking certain intellectual skills that I would hope that everybody would develop.
And attention skills too, because there's no quick way to get through it. You kind of just need to get in there and grind your way out. Yeah. And
also to think about the way in which that's not merely a cognitive skill. It may also be, at least in a transferable way, a moral skill, right? You got the old stuff from Simone Weil, who talks about, she talks about love as attention.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't ever have the capacity really to pay attention, you're not going to be very good at loving. because it takes a lot of attention to love another person.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that it's not just a question about whether or not you can sit down with a book. You actually are forming yourself and forming your dispositions in a way that are going to have a profound impact upon the kind of person that you are. I don't mean by that you can't develop the capacity to have attention and thus love by other means than reading books.
No, yeah.
Yeah,
totally.
this is not an elitist argument for book readers.
Right.
But when your tendency is always, I just want whatever's fast, then that's a dangerous recipe.
I'm super happy that you said that, because it's true. Reading is not the only way for that to happen. But I do love that you brought up Simone's to love someone is to pay attention to them, because I think something I've noticed in my friendships, in not really my marriage, because Todd is not really ever on his phone, but with friendships over the last 5 or 6 years, we've made a really big effort to not have our phones with us when we're together. So in general, our cultural standard among our friends is to keep our phones in our purses or something like that, because the attention piece, it just grabs your attention so fast. And Jefferson Fisher, who is like a lawyer that does stuff on communication, was just on a podcast with the Diary of a CEO guy. And they were sitting across from each other on a table, and he took out his phone and put it up. And he said, "How do you feel with me talking with you right now with my phone up?" And he said, "I don't feel good." And he said, "Why?" And he said, "Well, because I feel like I'm a priority of multiple priorities in your life." And it's like, okay. So Jefferson takes it and he turns it around. "How do you feel?" "Slightly better," because now it's saying like you're the priority over this phone. Jefferson puts it in his pocket. "How do you feel?" "Way better." And then he said, "What if I told you I left my phone in the car because I'm just here to be with you today?" And it actually was like very moving for the host to consider that level of attention being given to him. And I thought that was such a great challenge in general, which I guess every day with you is like that, because you don't have a phone. You got to pull out that laptop and open it up.
I got to pull out the laptop or the iPad. That's
so
right.
True.
You're going to know if I'm not paying attention to you.
It's so true.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that fascinating? Because and then if you're sitting at a table, even if it is face down, if it buzzes, now everybody's wondering, is this person going to pick up his phone and look to see who texted him?
And everyone's picking up to see if it's theirs buzzing.
Yeah. So.
And the Apple Watch, that's getting me lately.
Have you got one?
No, I don't have one.
Yeah.
But the whole text message is popping up, and people do the tap thing, but they're pulled out of the moment.
Exactly.
And you sense the attention going, and then it takes twice as much work to get back in.
Get it back in. That's right.
And then I notice as a person in conversation with someone that I then get insecure, and I'm like, okay, like you're not really wanting to listen anyways. Like, I'm just going to wrap up. Right. And then that leads to more distrust and fracturing and whatever. Right. And it's obviously a modern issue that we have to deal with.
And, so if Netflix really is doing storytelling for people who are distracted in that way, it's like, really? Is that what you want to do? You want to give your life doing that kind of storytelling? Why not just say, no? Because I'm not patient enough to carry on a conversation with somebody who's that distracted with me. And I'm kind of like, and I've even started lately where, how like you can be in a social context and you can be telling a story. Somebody can ask you a question and you can start answering the question, and then whatever happens, whether it's a phone, whether it's the waitress comes to take your order, and attention has to turn, right? And then somebody else can start talking about something else, right? I've just decided, I generally speaking, I am not going to pick back up with my story. I'm waiting to see if anybody wants to hear my story.
To jump back in.
Yeah, and because, and then I'm trying to be the kind of person who pays that kind of attention to other people, right?
Yeah.
If they get interrupted in their story, for me to try to make sure I say, hey, you got interrupted, keep telling us your story.
Yes.
Because those things matter so much for a relationship, right? And we know if people are not paying us that kind of attention, and we don't have to be bitter about it, but it's like, but you know something about your relationship with somebody when they do or do not pay you attention in that way.
Why do you think that story matters in that way?
Well, generally speaking, I think very often the stories that we choose to tell, we're telling something about ourselves. Especially if it's a story about ourselves, right? Because we are story-formed creatures. And if someone is interested in a story that I have to tell about my own experience, then they're interested in me as a human being. And if they're not interested in the story, then, well, maybe they're not interested in me as a human being. And so that's why I think it's so important.
Yeah, that's true. It's just very personal.
Yeah.
We had friends over for dinner last week, and I asked on my phone, I have a notes app with just like 100 and something questions that I've collected over time. And sometimes I'll say, everyone choose a number. And then whatever number they land on is their question that they have to answer. Great. Thank you, Lee. Oh, yeah, you would love my list of questions.
I would love your list of questions. I'll send it to you. Please.
But the question we landed on was basically asking about family lore. Like, tell us a piece of family lore from your life. And it can be anything. Like, some of them were generations deep. Some of them were like more recent events, but it was really interesting for everyone to be able to go around and share just parts of their history and their stories. That connected us in a very, I don't know, I've known those people for forever, but you just learn different parts.
That's right.
Yeah, that pop up.
Yeah, I love that.
Lee, you need that question.
Yes. I love that. Yeah, please do send me your list of questions.
It's a question roulette. Some of the questions are serious.
Yeah.
Like that one. Like at one question, I did this recently, like, I don't know, a couple of months ago at someone's birthday dinner. And the question was, who would you want with you on your deathbed, and what would you want to tell them? And one of my friends got instantly teary, and he said, I would want my mom, and I would want to let her know that she did enough. And like it like opened up this stunning conversation around like their relationship with their mom, and yeah, how like it led to actually him having a conversation with his mom later too, which was beautiful. But then some questions are goofy.
Yeah.
Like if you could have a superpower kind of thing, you know, so chill vibes.
Yeah.
But I feel like it really rises and meets the moment.
Oh, that's great. I love it. Yep. There's a card game.
Esther Perel?
No, it's the something list maybe.
Okay.
I just bought it and I haven't used it yet, but it's like it can be people, it can be just friends, or it can be people who have had partnerships for a long, long time. And it's just a pack of questions. It's kind of like your note app, but it's
but you just have to pay for it.
You just have to pay for it.
Yeah. What caused you to pay for it? What do you want?
I was thinking that I might use it on some dates with my wife, because it'd be interesting to us to pop out some questions. We'll still occasionally learn things about each other that we didn't know. But, you know, we've been married 35 years now. But we'll still occasionally, she'll tell some story or I'll tell some story, and we'll say, I don't think I've ever heard that story before. So,
like about your upbringings?
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that, Lee.
Yeah,
that's
great.
so creative.
It's great.
Well, all about a good story. Anything you feel like we missed from this? Anything in terms of your attention span and how you keep it going that you would want to share with the class?
I think it's like everything. It's exercise. If we don't exercise it, if you don't use it, you lose it. So don't screw around and lose it.
And by that, you mean your attention span?
Yes.
Nice. Okay.
I do mean attention span.
Some people at the moment, it's like this trend over the past, I don't know, year to do a stimulation detox where people will film themselves in a time lapse for a full hour just staring at a wall to get their attention span back.
Really?
Isn't that interesting?
That is interesting.
I don't know if there's science behind it, but I know that people are doing it.
Huh.
And you see them so jittery, and then eventually they kind of settle in.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff about dopamine. You know, that only way you can kind of get this stuff reset is if you do some sort of fasting and some sort of detox from the constant drip of it.
Maybe
So,
that's where it comes
yeah,
from.
maybe that's what it comes from. Yeah.
Nice. Well, great conversation, Lee.
Good conversation, Savannah.